I said it a number of times this offseason, regardless of the records, regardless of how good or not so good these two teams are, once they get on the field with those two uniforms, it's going to bring back a lot of good memories for a lot of people across the country. I'm going to be one of them because Nebraska, Oklahoma, man, that meant something. That meant something big. That meant usually top 5 teams clashing, hard-hitting, meaningful games Thanksgiving weekend for a long, long time. So buckle up. Get set. We hope it's a good one on the field, but if nothing else, it's going to dredge up a lot of nostalgia here coming up. Oklahoma, Nebraska in Norman on Saturday. Of course, this is our Huskers live show right here at the Voice of College Football, and we've got our Oklahoma fans and Oklahoma channel on board as well. So if you have yet to introduce yourselves to one, Greg Peterson from Husker Online, here's the guy that makes this show roll. 34 consecutive shows. Greg, how we doing tonight?
Doing good, Mark. Doing really good tonight. Ready to see a little Oklahoma, Nebraska rekindle that rivalry.
Heck yeah. And maybe get to see Oklahoma play like they did in week 1 against Tulane. Maybe if they can do that, then we're going to have ourselves a good ball game.
Don't get Husker fans' hopes up too much there.
All right. Well, at least Nebraska took care of business the last 2 weeks since that clunker in week 1 in the Big Ten opener at Illinois. Since then, of course, they took care of Fordham. Nobody questioned that. But there were some concerns facing a Buffalo team that's been one of the better teams in the MAC the last several seasons. They came in with a strong rushing attack, but that Nebraska defense took care of things. Luke Reimer in particular, boy, he had a heck of a Saturday.
Yeah, Luke really showed up. He came out to play, and we had him in studio on Sunday. Obviously, he was our defensive player of the game, and we talked to him fresh off of that win and that performance. And then he followed it up on Monday. He came out yesterday for the Monday press conference, and he didn't even know that he would been named Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week until somebody told him, I guess, in the locker room or something Monday morning. So, yeah, he played well. He played very well. And, it's kind of funny, too, because last Tuesday, before we did our show, I was talking with, sometimes our contributor, former Husker Josh Banderas, who's coaching out in Oregon State right now on the Oregon State staff. And, I brought up the linebacker play, and he had mentioned a couple of other guys, and I brought up Luke to Josh, and he came right back and said, "Yeah, Luke's playing great." And Josh actually coached Luke when Luke was at Omaha North Star here, his senior year. Josh was over there as an assistant, unpaid graduate assistant type role. So yeah, those guys go way back, and Luke played a hell of a game, and he had that interception, beautiful pick, and a score, and just a beautiful, beautiful thing. It was nice to see his performance. He almost had 2. He should have had 2 almost.
Yeah, Luke Reimer, 16 tackles. The defense in total had 6 tackles for loss. No sacks on the day, but it wasn't needed. 28-3, only 3 points given up. Anytime you keep the opponent out of the end zone, of course, that's a tremendous defensive effort in today's game.
And they hurried. They had 22 or 23 quarterback hurries there. I mean, they were after them, and that's the way people are playing Nebraska now. That they're trying to get rid of the ball quick because Nebraska does have a pass rush, and teams recognize that. And before we move on to just another quick note with Luke Reimer, interesting story there with him is he grew up down in right on the Kansas-Nebraska border down in Kansas, and played 8-man football, and so he's got a ton of family down there in the Oklahoma area, and so he's got a ton of people coming to the game, a bunch of Oklahoma fans coming to the game to watch him play. So I think he got like 20 tickets or something like that. And, he played, like I said, he played 8-man football down there, and then his dad had passed away, and he ended up moving to Lincoln and actually played his high school football here in Lincoln at Lincoln North Star.
We appreciate everybody being here let's not make this a trend like we did last week, where it was tremendous to have so many people at the end of the show, but it took everybody about 50 minutes to get here. So get here on time, 7 o'clock Central Time, every Tuesday night. Huskers Live right here, the voice of college football. Alan's here early with his score prediction. So Alan, a faithful GBR, but he's going to take it the neutral route, and he's not too optimistic here. 49-24 Sooners, but reminding everyone, as Alan always does, we appreciate that, Alan. Please like the video, share these videos out on social media, and just let people know that we are here every Tuesday night talking Huskers football. All right. Yeah, we'll get to the offensive side of the ball. Adrian Martinez put it up. Let's see. 13 of 19, obviously didn't have to throw it too much, and he was able to take a little bit of time off at the end of the game. 242 through the air, 2 touchdowns. Scott Frost talked after the game about how efficient and how fluid he was throwing the ball, and crisply, about as well as he's thrown it.
Well, yeah, and then also you take away 2 other touchdown passes that were called back due to penalty as well. So, yeah, Adrian had a really good game, and you know, he turned that game around when it was a tight game, and he made a little chicken something out of chicken something, and came up with a 71-yard run that was a thing of beauty down to about the 2-yard line. So he had a great game. He really did, and he was on target in a game where, you know, you were shorthanded coming in. As for weapon-wise, as Omar Manning didn't play because he was banged up, and Xavier Betts replaced him, and he got banged up and left the game. And Austin Allen left the game on the 4th or 5th play of the game after a catch, and with, you know, he hit his head after he got tackled. And so, yeah, it was a mash unit out there with a lot of backups. You know, and you know, I forget to mention that Oliver Martin had missed another game as well. So, yeah, the receiving flanks were you know, they were down a little bit, but next guy up, step up mentality, and Samori Toure just had another outstanding game with 2 long touchdown catches. You know, 2 straight games over 130 receiving yards for Samori Toure, and he kind of smitten himself into, you know, now people understand why we've all said that he's going to be playing on Sundays.
2 catches for 136 yards. He split them right down the middle. 68-yard catch for a touchdown, 68-yard catch for a touchdown. That does wonders for your average per reception.
A third one that got called back due to a hold. So, yeah.
Moonbot checking in early. Says Adrian was a blast to watch this past Saturday. Says the offensive line bad, looks overwhelmed.
That offensive line has been the disappointment so far, absolutely. But they did play a little bit better, and they, you know, Adrian had a lot of time. He wasn't hurried like he had been as much. So, you know, there was time for Adrian to let things open up, and yeah, the offensive line is a thing that, you know, they got a lot of pride. And they are taking a lot of the blame right now because that rushing attack needs to get in gear. You know, it's been very slow to start. It took at least a half for the running game to actually start to pick up a little bit. And you know, they bailed themselves out with the option play now lately, which has become a little bit more of a part of the arsenal now. And just in time for Oklahoma, right? To see a little bit of option maybe on both sides of the ball. And yeah, you know, this is their time to step up, and this is the time for you prove yourself. You know, Oklahoma's ranked number 3 for a reason, and you know, you got to go down there and show that you're right up there, good enough to play with a team like that. And I think they're ready to accept the challenge, and hopefully Saturday they play much, much better.
Besides Martinez' long run for 71 yards and a touchdown, basically Gabe Ervin was the rushing attack, 10 carries, 56 yards from the running back position, 2 touchdowns there. And Moonbot we got him on record here. Look at this. He's promising shirts. Unleash the Ante, GBR, sending Greg the shirts this week.
Let's hope so. We've been waiting. I know you said there was going to be a delay in that there, Moonbot, and that's all good. And like I said, as soon as we get those shirts here, the Yantee's going to take a look at it, and we'll see what we can do with those. And you know what? Hopefully, maybe he gets a chance down in Norman. You never know, because right now the running back room, there's a lot of guys in there, and it seems like every week somebody's the hot guy, and we kind of said this is what it was going to look like, that they're going to play a lot of guys, and they're going to go with the guy that's the hottest at that time. And last week it was Gabe Urban. Week before that was Marquise Stepp.
Moonbot and Alan with a lot of tongue-in-cheek. Alan has mentioned several times in the chat that USC fired its head coach. We get it.
No, you missed Moonbot's there bobblehead of Mario Verduzco there. That's beautiful. That would be a thing of beauty.
Oh, I got it. I got it. I just passed that one by. Okay. Moonbot 7's got game grades against Buffalo. The offense got a B+. The defense an A. Special teams in an F.
Hey, you missed 3 field goals again, and another botched punt return. The special teams has just been a mess every week. It's a little something different. So special teams has just been a joke, and you can't have these mistakes when you go play a team like Oklahoma. So. This is the week. This is the week for the special teams to prove that they don't stink or like one of the worst special teams units in the nation, which is kind of the way they're trending right now.
Folks, the Super Chat's available, and also you can contribute on Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search Mark Rogers TV. You can do that. You can also follow us on Patreon. Somebody here went 17-7 against the spread last weekend. So I'm going to brag about that, because anytime I can do it, I'll brag about it. But when I'm silent, I had a bad week. So if I don't say anything, I had a bad week. But we got Greg's picks over there. We got my picks. We got 20 media members over there on Patreon every week. So check out our predictions. It's only 17 cents per day on Patreon. And again, please bring some more folks in here. Greg delivers each and every week here on Tuesday night at 7 o'clock Central Time. So Brad here is going to take the optimistic look at the offensive line, basically saying it's a skill. Takes time. A lot of redshirts, freshmen and sophomores up front. Takes time to gel and develop.
Absolutely. He's 100% right there. And, you do have a bunch of young guys, and you also, right now, you have a true freshman in Teddy Prohaska, who's getting playing time. He's burned 2 out of his 4 games that you were planning on redshirting this guy, but he has progressed so much farther and faster than anybody ever believed. As a kid that came in as 6'9", 300-pound guy when he came in, and now they're talking about not even redshirting the guy. So you have a ton of young talent on that offensive line, and it does take time. And the more snaps they get, the better they're going to get. So let's see. This weekend maybe they put it all together, and I mean their goal. They know they want to turn those 2-yard gains into a 8-yard gain, into a 15-yard gain, and that's the goal, and they're going to keep plugging away at it until they get it right.
We appreciate Kyle, Cheryl, everybody else who encourages to hit the like button. Sam, Kim, good to see you, Sam, giving us the word on the Vegas line. Oklahoma's a 22.5-point favorite. The over-under is 61.5. Seems pretty fair.
Well, I don't know. I mean, Oklahoma's defense is ranked pretty high. Aren't they like 7th in the nation right now after 2 games? A little bit different than we're used to out of Oklahoma.
They
Obviously, we
played
know
Western Carolina last week.
we know they can score points. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Oh boy, it's just Nebraska is such a hard team to call when you're looking at the point spread and where games are played and who they're playing against. It's just such a rough call. And in my opinion on that, if you're looking at betting information or what have you, just go with what Vegas is going with. That's your best bet on that one.
So we've got our Oklahoma fans in here on the Oklahoma channel. Want to remind everybody that whether you're a Sooners fan or a Huskers fan, we've got our Oklahoma show Wednesdays at 12:30 Eastern time. So that's tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow already. Wednesday, 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 in the morning Central time over on the Oklahoma channel. All right.
You gonna send me a wake up call?
I will. A wake up call.
Yeah.
I can send you a wake up call. Okay. It's going to come about 3 minutes after my wake up call because anytime I've got an early one like that, you never know if I'm going to be rolling out of bed or not. Probably, I am. So we've got Dan Richardson. Good to see you, Dan, here in recent weeks. Greg, would like your opinion on comparing the current talent level of Oklahoma versus the current talent level of Nebraska?
Well, Oklahoma and Nebraska do they cross over a little bit on recruiting, where they do recruit a lot of the same guys. So, I'm a little bit more familiar with an Oklahoma roster like that. And I mean, obviously, for the last 5 or 6 years, Oklahoma has obviously signed much better talent. Now Nebraska is starting to catch up a little bit on that front, but overall, Oklahoma's talent level is built for a team that contends to be in the college football playoff year in and year out, and Nebraska's quite frankly isn't. Nebraska's still searching for that, and Nebraska's just not going to get to that level that Oklahoma's at until you start winning games on the field. And, ironically, if you think about this game, and by some miracle, Nebraska pulls out a win in Norman on Saturday, imagine how much of a boost in recruiting that would do for this Nebraska program right now to get them on that trajectory to where Oklahoma is at right now. So, bottom line on to answer that question is that, Oklahoma across the board is probably 3 deep at every position, where Nebraska still is not. And they're still kind of scratching it, trying to be 2 deep at every one of those positions.
I've asked you this question before in a different way, but if you took Nebraska's recruiting classes that comprise the current roster, so that's the last 4 to 5, maybe even 6 now with the pandemic year. So we're talking about
Big Pete.
Talking about probably recruiting classes that have probably averaged about 20 to 25 in the country, according to the services, something in that range, 20 to 25. If you take Oklahoma's, they're probably around the lower portion of the top 10. They've been a little bit better than that the last couple of years, but probably 7 to 10 in the country. What is the difference between if you're signing 20 to 25 players and you're 20 to 25 in the country versus a team that's 7 to 10 in the country? What's going to make up that gap? Like signing 3 or 4 more 4-stars?
Well, that's what it's all. That's I mean, that's basically where it's at. It's your star ranking, your star rating that you're recruiting to. And it's a whole different story when you look at the analytics on those classes on how they pan out. After these guys have completed their college careers, when you're talking about 4-star recruits compared to 3-star recruits, and the bulk of your classes are going to be 3-star recruits most of the time anyway. But Oklahoma's got that in that higher echelon where that gap is is much closer between a 4 and 3 stars. And then you throw in a couple of 5 stars where, Nebraska doesn't typically get a 5-star recruit. Baker Steinkuhler was the last 5-star football recruit that they got, and he was a product right out of Lincoln here. And then you look at, Oklahoma's got talented quarterbacks that win Heisman trophies and go start on Sundays in the NFL, and Nebraska, quite frankly, hasn't had that. The last Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Nebraska has was Eric Crouch. So those kind of discrepancies, you're just going to get those higher ranked kids that want to go somewhere where they're guaranteed they know they're going to go play in a conference championship every year and have a chance to go play for a national championship every year. And the kids these days are right, quite frankly, are too young to even remember when Nebraska was at that high caliber of a program that you were guaranteed to be, playing for a national title every year almost.
Got Big Pete here. He's looking to give out game balls.
Yeah, he's right on it. Chris Hickman's had a hell of a year already. He's just been overshadowed by a couple of other performances for the last couple of games. Otherwise, Nick would be right up there maybe for defensive player of the week. And Chris Hickman, he's taking advantage right now of his opportunities. We talked a little bit earlier about the injuries that Nebraska is going through with the wideouts and the tight ends. And Adrian Martinez had one of those beautiful just plays off the cuff where he flipped one out to Chris Hickman, and Hickman made the most of it. And then later in the game, Logan Smothers hit Chris Hickman on a bomb down the sideline. So, it's great to see Chris Hickman getting some chances now. Those two guys are best of friends. They've gone through, since grade school they've been together, and both were 4-star recruits coming out of Omaha Burke, and both getting their chance to shine right now as young Huskers, making the most for themselves right now. So Big Pete got to be one of the happier guys out there besides Coach Lamaji there at Omaha Burke right now.
We've got a Nebraska postgame show right here at the Voice of College Football. Huskers right after the game, so join us right there. And also have an Oklahoma postgame show on our Oklahoma channel after every OU game. So competing, dueling postgame shows after the ball game should be about 3:30 or 4 o'clock Eastern time, about an hour earlier than that, obviously, Central Time. Mason, I'll tell you what I told somebody just a few weeks ago. I had a number of people make comments about helmets. The last 2 people that wanted helmets, I can't remember the one before this, but the last one was a North Carolina fan that said, Mark, I want a North Carolina helmet. So I said, send me one. You want one up here? Send me one. So that's what they did.
Not hard.
They sent me a nice little contribution, plus they sent me a helmet. So, Mason, we are going to add to the helmet collection via you and everybody else who wants helmets. All right.
Hey, I you know what? We should wait for them to come out with the one the Huskers just wore against Buffalo that had the NU on it. Pretty cool one-time deal there with the old classic gray face mask on too. That was a sweet-looking helmet.
You like that?
Yeah, I did.
You like the alternative uniforms?
Usually I'm not a big fan of it, but that helmet really, that looked good. And the jerseys looked good. So, yeah.
Mustrick with his take on the offense and the defense. On the D side, middle linebacker blitz, we have been running over and over. Could be set up for different blitz. I think Mustrick is making the point earlier that he thinks these first 3 games, Nebraska's been running a lot to set up Oklahoma and future opponents.
Excuse me. This is a chess game. I don't think that, that's above our pay grade to even be thinking about, if you ask me. But I wouldn't go past that at all. Why do you think Nebraska's been shown the option the last couple of weeks? I think there's something going on there that they might pull out on Saturday that fools the Sooners and vice versa. I think that's what this is all about. And, obviously Lincoln Riley has never played Nebraska before as a head coach. And Scott Frost has never played against the Lincoln Riley team either. So, there might be a few shenanigans going on.
A few shenanigans, or a few shenanigans like an option play that's run a couple times a game in the 3 games before, just to make Oklahoma have to practice against it and then not even use it. Yep. But you made them waste their practice time.
Absolutely. So what's all about?
Mustrick, good to see you as always, man. Is our lack of experience on the offensive line having so many underclassmen starting due to poor planning in recruiting? Before you answer that, Greg, isn't it pretty typical that a team's going to have almost the exact, every team's going to be a little bit different based on what they value and what kind of offense and defense they run. So obviously they run a 4-2-5. They don't have as many linebackers on the field, for example, but basically everybody runs the same general personnel per unit. So the formula is pretty tight in terms of how many quarterbacks do you need on the roster? How many running backs do you need on the roster through every unit? And therefore you want to be fairly balanced from year to year in hitting those marks in recruiting and signing players.
Hey, they've been recruiting exactly the offensive linemen they've been wanting. Greg Austin, these guys love Greg Austin. Greg Austin knows what he's looking for. And, they've been recruiting strong on the offensive line. And you just have to look at right now. There's 2 guys off of that offensive line right now that are on NFL rosters right now. Matt Farniok is backup center for Dallas. And, so look, Brendan Hymus, he's where's he at? I think he's with the Chargers. I'm not sure. But, so you're replacing an old offensive line right now. And what do you have to replace it with? A bunch of young guys, but a lot of young guys across the board that have a lot of game playing experience when you actually look at it. And, your starting center is a 3rd-year player, but he's only a sophomore. So, it's young across the board, but you have a lot of talent there that is all young talent that they're developing. And the pipeline, in my opinion, has never looked as good as it has for the future moving forward here.
Number of comments coming in. Dan was commenting on the base run play. And then if
base run play is what they've got to improve on. And I think they're going to keep running it to death until they can get that to work.
We're going to ask you, Greg, possibly to delve deep on the roster here because Don is asking about a backup field goal kicker.
They got a bunch of kickers on the roster. We'll just put it that way. They thought they had the one that has been a proven kicker in the Big Ten for many years. Or, actually, no, he was kicked at LSU. So, yeah, it's just bizarre that that he can have a game like that. But, yeah, it's hard to say. You don't have a proven guy, but you have a lot of guys back there waiting for a chance to, if they get a chance out there, they're going to go out and do their darndest. So
we're talking about a kicker here.
Not a kicker. Yeah.
This is pretty cutthroat. He has one bad game. Let's get rid of him. This is, we're talking about a kicker here who was 13 for 15 last year.
Right.
And he was 4 for 5 from plus 40 yards in his career before this game. So.
And the disturbing thing, too, is that I was even saying this before it happened. They marched him out there at the end of the game in a useless situation. just to, I think, give him a little bit of confidence after missing 2. And I'm like, why are you even sending him out there? Because what if he misses another one? And sure enough, he misses a third one. And you got to give the kid credit, though. He came out for a post-game press conference. He came out and talked. And I questioned that, too. I'm like, why would you even want to come out and talk after missing 3 field goals? But he did. So, maybe he's got that mentality that like cornerbacks have. You get burned once, you know what? Come back and play the next play and get an interception. So maybe that's Connor's thinking on that, and hopefully he doesn't have another game like that. And luckily, it didn't cost him the ball game. None of them actually came up to matter that he missed. It was just 9 points that didn't get put on the board with the other 14 that didn't get up there because of penalties. So it is what it is.
Well, with him coming out to the media, I give him a lot of credit for that. But again, he's a guy that's got a long track record. Made 13 out of 15 field goals last year, 11 out of 15 the year before. So he could be feeling just as confident, just thinking, okay, I just didn't have it today. And that almost has never happened to me. So I'm feeling pretty good that I will get it straightened out and that everything's good.
Yeah.
Moonbot 7. Wow. He dragged this stat. It doesn't surprise me. 0-7 for Scott Frost against top 25 teams with an average score of 42-18.
Hasn't been pretty.
Greg, what would a win in Norman against Oklahoma, number 3 in the country, do for this program on Saturday?
Yeah, it means everything. Like I touched on a little bit ago, it would jumpstart recruiting. And right now there's absolutely no recruiting news going on here, and absolutely that would jumpstart things on the recruiting trail, and it would give all of Husker Nation a little bit of pride back, and it would give Nebraska that momentum that they need to go into that Big Ten conference season now, when you're already starting 0-1 before you are playing your actual conference opening game, which traditionally you'd be playing at this time of year. So, yeah, it means everything. It really does. Ouch.
Got comment coming in. Oklahoma recruiting talent level getting better because OU no longer has Bob Stoops and Mike Stoops running the show. Well, they were doing pretty well under Bob Stoops as well. They were doing okay.
Yeah, they were. That sounds like it might be a shot at Youngstown, Ohio bred coaches. I don't know.
That's right.
Bo Pelini is in that group.
That's right. I'm guessing that you're never out there scouting, looking at kickers. That's pretty rare that you're on the high school.
Every now and then, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like say there's a kicker that there's a kicker here in town who's a Nebraska legacy that is a kicker right now because he's a freshman. But he'll be a positional player next year on the varsity team, but he's a kicker right now. So there's always an exception to that rule. Unless there's an established guy that has offers and stuff, then yeah, you're going to cover him. But it's pretty rare. Usually not going to spend money to jump on an airplane to go cover a kicker. We'll just put it that way.
Usually if it comes along with another player that you're scouting.
Right, exactly. Right. You get a 2 for 1, absolutely.
Yep. Now, this here cracks me up. So Christopher here, he comments to the show a lot, and he is a faithful contributor to the show, so we appreciate that. But he thinks recruiting ratings are stupid. They're pretty accurate for being so stupid. But
Yeah, well, I mean, it's sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. You can't get them all right. I mean, that's bottom line.
Well,
Somebody,
absolutely.
somebody's always going to be upset the way a kid's ranked. Either they're ranked too high or they're ranked too low. So, I
But
mean, I've been dealing with that for 20 years, and you can't ever win on that one.
collectively, though, it's pretty astounding how accurate they are.
Well, you can tell. It's pretty darn easy if you go walk onto a football field and say, okay, all right, yeah, say, okay, you're here in the heartland somewhere in Nebraska or Iowa or Kansas or something like that, and you see that one guy out there on the field that okay, man, that guy's a special kind of something. But say you go to somewhere like Atlanta or somewhere in Florida or somewhere in Texas when you have 30 D1 kids on the field at the same time. That's when the ratings get a little bit more difficult. But there's always going to be those couple of standouts that you can tell, and that's why those guys are ranked 5-star for a reason, because they've already got that special something that you can tell that they're just a superior type of an athlete, and they're kind of they're almost a guaranteed lock to be playing on Sundays.
We would like to continue to welcome everybody here on the Nebraska channel for our Huskers show that we bring you every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern and 7 o'clock Central, but also our OU fans on the Oklahoma channel, and our host of our pregame, postgame. He just tears it up on our Oklahoma channel. We got Jason Ray coming in on the line from Last Word on College Football, and I will first introduce you to. So, Jason, that's Greg Peterson, Husker Online. Greg, Jason Ray, again, heads us up in terms of our coverage over on our Voice of College Football Oklahoma channel.
Nice to meet you, Jason.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on here.
Absolutely. You two get to mix it up now, Oklahoma and Nebraska. So I don't know how good the game's going to be on Saturday, but, man, it used to be just a monumental rivalry in college football, obviously. So if you guys have any questions for each other in regards to matchups and how these teams have looked for the first 2 to 3 games, I'll let you guys get after it.
Obviously, I haven't even had a chance to see Oklahoma play yet. I've been a little bit busy myself, so all I've been able to really do is see some highlights and some box scores, and that's about it. But they look like the same old Sooners to me.
Yeah, Greg. So I think for the first game against Tulane, it was a little bit of an up and down performance, right? Oklahoma struggled a little bit early on, specifically defensively. Gave up two touchdowns to Tulane on the first 2 possessions. Settled down a little bit, led 37-14 at the break, and then and really had one of the worst halves of football they've had in quite some time. Got outscored 21-3 by Tulane. Couldn't get off the field on defense. Couldn't sustain a lot of drives in the third and fourth quarter, and really, held on to win. They won the game 40-35, and Tulane had a chance with the ball in the last few minutes of the game. Played much better last week. Given I know you have to take that with a lot of grains of salt, so to speak. With the competition, Western Carolina is a mid-level, low-tier FCS team, but I think they did a lot of the things that you would have expected them to do in terms of a game 1 to game 2 improvement. They finished the game. One thing that's really kind of been a knock, I think a lot of Oklahoma fans would say so, but I think it's been a knock on Riley over the last few years is they've not always finished as well as they should have. Kansas State the last couple of years, and just some games where athletically they're much better than the opponent, and they really just kind of played down to that competition. So yeah, honestly, really excited about the game. And I had to laugh here. I saw a comment that was really talking about, I believe it was and unfortunately I was in the stands watching both of these games. I believe it was 1996 and 1998 when Nebraska beat Oklahoma. I think 69-7 one year, and the next it was I want to say like in the 70-something to 28, and it was really just the worst the worst era of Oklahoma football that they've really ever had outside of the '60s. So for me, just exciting to have the game, talking about these two teams playing each other. I think certainly maybe not quite the same in terms of notoriety coming into the game as some of those games in the '80s, and definitely not the '90s, but some of those early 2000 games as well. And I think wanted to certainly get your thoughts on this, just from obviously well before my time covering and watching football, but we had an article at Last Word on College Football this week that we really kind of did a rewind on the 1971 game, and I think it's one of those games, Greg, that's really kind of stood the test of time in terms of a lot of people still believe 50 years later that was the greatest college football game ever played, still in knowing that the game is so different now than when it was 50 years ago.
Yeah, and that's what's funny is that that's brought up today with some of the assistant Nebraska coaches today. Mario Verduzco, the quarterback's coach, was asked about it. He said, "Yeah, I remember watching that game with and they're like, what do you remember about that?" He's like, "My mom was just going crazy over it, that they were out in the Bay Area, and for some reason they were Nebraska fans, and he remembers Johnny Rogers running that return back, and it's just kind of funny that they're watching on all beat up black and white TV, and I was 3 years old when that happened, and so I know I was watching it, but I don't recall it except for as many times as I've seen it replayed, and I've heard because the radio broadcast, it just goes down in history, and
yeah.
And some of the other Nebraska coaches that are old enough to even remember that. But, the thing that's funny is that most of the kids on the team have no idea what we're talking about here. And maybe a few of the Nebraska players they're born here in the state and were grown up Nebraska fans even know about it. But you can see, I pulled this old thing out of my archives. This is from 1975, okay? Back when this was a series, and I mean, that's what I'm curious about is what Oklahoma thinking about. Do they still think this is a rivalry game? Because unfortunately, this, for the last 11 years, it's not talked about as a rivalry anymore. But you're exactly right; it stands the test of time, and every Nebraska fan that I know, that I've heard of, I mean, this game means more to them than anything in the last 11, 12 years.
Yeah, so I think in Norman, Greg, I think there's a lot of excitement about this game. I think certainly it was one of the rivalries that many Oklahoma fans missed and still miss to this day, because I think it was always a rivalry built on mutual respect. Oklahoma has Texas, and it's built on mutual hate, and then the in-state rivalry with Oklahoma State is much in the same. But I think this is a game where, traditionally you would see these teams that they don't talk trash to each other. They don't, it's very much a respectful rivalry. So I think even a lot of Oklahoma fans, even feel for Nebraska, just, not being quite what they were, in the '80s and '90s. And I think, for me, just as an overall, just kind of college football fan in general, I think college football is better when teams like Nebraska are good and more competitive. So, I mean, I guess, just for me, Greg, my question is, I know I haven't watched a whole lot of Nebraska at all. I watched the entire Illinois game, but then I've watched bits and pieces of Fordham, and then a little bit last week in Buffalo. I think, at least from my perspective, it looks like maybe the defensive lines, the strength of the team, at least coming together a little bit. What are your areas of maybe concern for Nebraska coming into this game on both sides of the ball?
Well, if you ask Nebraska players across the board and coaches, speed is what keeps coming out. Nebraska hasn't played a Big 12 team in a while, and most of the players kind of relate the Big 12 to speed. So that's what they're worried about. But then they can counter right back, say, hey, we have fast guys too. So, obviously Spencer Rattler, brings up a huge concern just with his mobility and his dual threat ability. But in turn, Nebraska's got a pretty formidable pass rush, even though the numbers might not show it. But teams recognize that, so they're getting rid of the ball right away against Nebraska and not allowing that pass rush to come in, because their front seven is very formidable and one of the best I've seen around here in many, many years. The defense over the whole, very, very solid unit. 2 games in a row now without allowing a touchdown, even though it's against inferior competition. I won't say Buffalo's inferior competition; they're a pretty good ball team, but that defense is coming out to play, and they got a chip on their shoulder, and they got something to prove. So they're looking forward to playing Oklahoma. I'll tell you that right now. Offensively, it's a work in progress. And traditionally, I think when you're around here, you kind of think Nebraska, or you think that Oklahoma doesn't play defense, and statistically, right now, Oklahoma is in the top 10 defensively, and that does reflect on who they played as well. But like we talked about earlier on the show before you joined us, Nebraska and Oklahoma recruit a lot of the same guys, and Oklahoma's been winning that battle on the recruiting front, so I'm very familiar with a lot of their defensive players over there. And, I think that across the board, I love the talent athletically, and I just hope Nebraska's offensive line can hold up against that quick defensive push that you guys have there. So those would be my main concerns, and then. Just hopefully Adrian Martinez has time to look downfield a little bit, and hopefully the Nebraska running game can open things up for that passing game. But it's all speculation right now, and that's why they play those games on Saturday, and it's all above my pay grade to to really analyze it all.
Yeah, no, I completely understand, and I think it's very similar looking at both teams. Specifically defensively, I think Oklahoma's strength is in its front seven as well. I think they're a little, unproven in the back end. They had a lot of busts on the back end against Tulane. Was much better against Western Carolina, but still, the coverage wasn't great. So I think the game probably, more often than not happens. But I think really, so in this game, it's going to be decided by the offensive line. Can they open up enough holes? Can they protect, each quarterback? And I think, for Oklahoma, I think defensively, just being able to contain Adrian Martinez, keep him in the pocket. I think he's, and this better than I do. I think maybe 2 out of the 3 games he's run for over 100 yards. So being able to keep him contained and not let him get loose is big as well. So and I think Oklahoma has struggled a little bit in game 1. Running the football, only a little over 3.5 yards per carry. They were much better against Western Carolina, 7.1. But I think Oklahoma being able to keep Rattler clean and being able to run the football is a very, very much a big part of this game.
Sounds like they both kind of looking to do the same thing, and the only thing that I can tell you for sure is each team is going to be playing the best opponent that they've seen so far this year.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. I think there's a lot of among Oklahoma fans. There's a lot of Tulane apologists. I think people are trying, and it remains to be seen. Let's see what they look like. Against I think they play Ole Miss this weekend, so that's a good barometer just to see how good they really are. But I think. Just looking at that, I think there was some concern is because it was really, Greg, almost national championship or bust, or at least national title game appearance or bust this year for Oklahoma. And there was a lot of concern after that first game. I mean, a little bit of it was alleviated slightly in the way they played Saturday, but obviously the opponents, is much to be talked about in terms of what that looks like. So yeah, I think it's certainly the best team that in the non-conference that either team will play. And the way the Big 12 looked this weekend, it could be one of their better, specifically athletically, one of the best opponents that Oklahoma will face this year, without a doubt, up until if they are able to get to the playoffs.
You never know. Maybe this time next year we're talking about a Big Ten SEC matchup between these two teams as well.
Yeah, that's right. That's definitely right.
Yeah, Texas got their taste this past weekend. I don't know how much that meant, but it meant something. All right, Toby Bowles and a few other people asked about Spencer Rattler, so I'll serve this up for Jason. So Toby's basically saying, will Rattler be able to handle the defense that's coming at him? Our defense will be respected after this game, and that's basically a statement there, but I'll couple that with Gary's question, Jason. Is Rattler to blame for OU struggling in the second half of games from last year to this year?
It's hard to answer. So in the first one, there was some big concerns, I think, coming out of Oklahoma with the way Rattler played in the first game. I think it was probably his worst game that he's played in a Sooner uniform in the first couple of years. His footwork mechanics was off. I think one of the things that you would notice out of him last year is the ball just basically flew off of his hand, and it necessarily wasn't the case. He was throwing off his back foot a lot. He was backpedaling a little bit when he would throw. He wasn't stepping into the throw, and his foot mechanics were a little off. So, by all accounts, that was much better in game 2. But I think absolutely, as we mentioned, I think they will certainly come after him a little bit more than maybe Tulane and Western Carolina was able to do. So yeah, I think that's one of the key parts of the game. If he's pressured, what's his decision making look like? Because decision making has been a big concern for him in some of the games where he struggled, is really forcing the ball in the coverage, not really letting his playmakers make plays on the outside. So in terms of the last question about is he to blame for Oklahoma's struggle? I don't know if he's specifically the only person to blame. I believe there's some collective blame. A lot of Lincoln Riley's kind of not pushing the gas pedal as much as he probably should, in some of these games where they're winning comfortably. I mean, look at the Tulane game's a perfect example, 37-14 at halftime, and it ends up being 40-35. And in those games, sometimes you can't just lay your helmet out there and go play. You've got to be ready. You've got to prepare the right way. And so I think certainly they'll be ready for this game. I would be shocked. They weren't completely ready for Tulane. I mean, they looked like they were ready, but it'd be hard to tell if they weren't against a team like Western Carolina. So this is the one to see. Are they amped? Are they ready to go in this game? Which I would, certainly expect that they would be.
So, Toby Bowles, thank you so much for letting us know that you believe that this is the best college football show on the internet. Thank you so much for that comment. And Michael, appreciate the encouragement for the super chats. Seth is looking for, and this is always difficult in the collegiate game, there's no official reporting on this. Coaches can keep this information under wraps, but asking for injury reports from each of you for as best you can deliver.
Yeah, we'll know more on Thursday, but from what we heard today from offensive coordinator Matt Lubick, is that he expects Oliver Martin and Travis Volkolek, it sounds like they will be ready to be back in the lineup. Austin Allen, the other tight end, hard to say right now. I'm not sure if he's in concussion protocol or not. Xavier Betts should also be back, and hopefully Omar Manning back too. So Nebraska might be at full strength there. Hopefully there's a strong possibility that they are at full strength there at the wide receiver and tight end position.
And for Oklahoma, they got a little nicked up in the secondary last week against Western Carolina. One of the starting cornerbacks, Willie Washington's doubtful right now. Kind of like you, Greg. Probably find out a little bit more by Thursday just to see exactly where they're at. Riley is very close to the cuff in terms of not releasing a whole lot of injury type of information, but I think Willie Washington's doubtful, so he's one of the Oklahoma's rotated a lot of guys there on the cornerback position. So I would be surprised if he plays, which that's going to be an impact. He was one of the starters the last 2 games of the season, and then started all last year. And then when you look in the Billy Bowman, who was the starting nickel, had a little bit of a hamstring tweak. I think he'll probably be fine. Those hamstrings, it's really hard to tell. Those are things that could nag him for the whole year, or it could be something that he can recover from pretty quickly. Other than that, that reserve linebacker Danny Stutzman, not quite sure what happened with him. He had what appeared to have been maybe like a dislocated elbow. So if that's really the case, he'll probably be out for a little bit. But not a whole lot on the offensive side of the ball from an injury perspective. They should be pretty full strength, but just a couple of guys in the secondary that could be out for Saturday could be concerning.
And I also need to add in too that Nebraska's also expecting back Casey Rogers, defensive end, who missed last week's game. So he should be full go as well. So that helps with that defensive line rotation for the Huskers.
Speaking of Rogers, and that's always a good name to bring up, 1971, of course, you guys talked about the game of the century, always brought up. And throughout the 80s and 90s, these were the two that owned the Big Eight in that Orange Bowl berth most of the time. The last time they got together, it was a pretty darn important game at the Big 12 championship, and a good one, 23-20 Oklahoma. What do you guys remember of that encounter, in which obviously Nebraska knew it was leaving to go to the Big Ten?
That's my biggest takeaway, is that was like the last hurrah, and Oklahoma ended up saying, all right, see you later, get out if you don't want to be here anymore, bye-bye. Nebraska really wanted to win that game, but it was a good game. 2 good teams going at it, but that was kind of the swan song, and things have never been the same for Nebraska ever since leaving the Big 12, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's the game, if I remember right. Nebraska got up to a big lead early on, 17-0, 17-3, something to that neighborhood, and then I think Rex Burkhead played quarterback a lot towards the end of that game, didn't he? Yeah. So, and so one of the guys, I think the thing, and that was probably the biggest win of Landry Jones's career, just in terms of being able to bring them back for Oklahoma. I think he's a guy, interesting. He's the all-time leading passer in the history of Oklahoma football, but most people wouldn't even put him on their top 10 in terms of overall, kind of players for Oklahoma. Just in terms of, he wasn't able to win the big game, never got Oklahoma to a, at that point, the BCS championship game, and really just underachieved a lot. So I think that was one of the things that I took away from it. Number one, obviously it was, almost sad watching it, knowing that these two teams would be playing each other on a regular basis. But two, having his probably one of his better, overall games, and one of the biggest wins that he's had in his career.
Jason, I want to make sure I respect your time. Do you have time for one more question here?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in regards to what you've seen at the Sooners, obviously in these 2 games, and you can only take so much away from Western Carolina, Tulane probably a top 50 or 60 team in the country, and certainly we will have more, everyone, with Jason tomorrow on the Oklahoma Channel, Sooners Live, 12:30 Eastern. And if we can get Greg out of bed, he's going to join us for a few minutes as well. All right. Based on that scare in the second half from Tulane and what you've been able to pick up from Nebraska, what are your biggest concerns about what type of game could get a little scary, and what type of mistakes are most probable to happen to Oklahoma that could keep Nebraska in the game and make this more interesting than the odds makers expect?
So I think one of the things we talked a little bit about earlier, Mark, is just Oklahoma's ability to protect and being able to push what I think is a pretty solid defensive line for Nebraska. being able to get that push, run the ball. I think when Oklahoma's at their best, they're able to do both. And I mean, I think that's a little bit cliche and maybe obvious, just kind of listening and watching football games. But Oklahoma relies on the ability to run and not to be single threaded. So I think that's one thing. If Oklahoma's not able to run the ball effectively, I think that could make the game a little bit closer. Rattler making some bad decisions, forced into some mistakes, I think could make the game a little bit closer. And I think, one of the comments I saw on here, guys, that was very interesting. It kind of took me back to that 2001 game where Oklahoma missed their Nate Hibble fell down on their, I think, halfback pass back to the quarterback, and Nebraska landed theirs, which ultimately won the game. So I think, if the creativity that Scott Frost could bring to this game to throw Oklahoma off, I think is interesting from a chess match perspective with Scott Frost against Alex Grinch on the defensive side of the ball. But I, for one, I know the line is 22 points at this point. I don't know if it still is what it is. I think that's what it opened at. I think it'll be a little bit closer than that. I think Nebraska is a very, very proud program that has been, maybe humbled a bit the last couple of years, but I think Oklahoma is going to get their absolute best shot, and they better be ready.
Well said. And since it's going to seem like about 15 minutes from now that we're all back together talking, maybe we'll save Greg's upset formula for tomorrow.
Sounds good to me.
So cook up your best upset formula for the Huskers, whatever that looks like. All right. Anything else tonight from you two?
I think
go ahead, Jason. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, as we talk about the 71 game, and I've seen, I every time it's being talked about, and I've seen a couple of times, the Oklahoma people are going to swear up and down that there was multiple blocks in the back on the Johnny Rogers punt return touchdown. It's always funny just to hear, anytime you even talk about that game, the first thing that somebody is going to say is talk about the illegal block in the back. And of course, the Nebraska guys are going to say, "Oh no, it was perfectly legal. Got him on the side, not in the back."
I think Johnny Rogers has to talk about that every Saturday anyway when he's at Memorial Stadium to this day. When he's up in the press box getting himself a soft drink and a hot dog.
And I was reminded by somebody in the live. Yeah, that's how it goes with legends. They're used to making the speaking appearances and then getting grabbed by every TV crew anytime they walk into a banquet hall or go to a stadium, and they get asked the same questions, especially when they're on the road where it's some type of another team that doesn't get to talk to them often. They're obviously gonna ask about what they're most famous about, so they just probably just have a recycled answer in their head that they just spit out. But Chris in the live chat reminded me of an interesting scenario that culminated that year in 1971, that the final AP rankings were Nebraska number 1, Oklahoma number 2, Colorado number 3.
Yeah.
Top 3 teams in the country. I don't know when that's ever happened from the same conference.
Yeah, that's crazy. Somebody should Google that right now, because that's crazy. And that's the funny thing too about Colorado. Okay, when Colorado left, Colorado was never considered a rivalry to Nebraska ever. When that Thanksgiving Day or that Black Friday game against Oklahoma was replaced by Colorado, which now is against Iowa, and neither one of them have the same meaning as that Oklahoma game ever did. And when you thought of Colorado leaving and you're never going to play Colorado again, who cares? That Oklahoma, not being able to play Oklahoma every year, that's the one that still stings, and that there should be some kind of a rule that you should be able to play somebody every year. Like, like Notre Dame used to play USC every year, used to play Michigan every year. I think that should be Nebraska, Oklahoma should have to play each other every year, or should want to play each other every year.
That's like Jason and I, during a conversation a week or two ago, Greg stumbled upon that, and I can't imagine that this has ever happened, where Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray being on the same roster, and of course Murray backing up Baker Mayfield. Has there ever been two quarterbacks on the same roster that both were Heisman Trophy winners and both the number one selection in the NFL draft? I can't imagine. That's so rare.
Hey, no way.
No, that hasn't happened. I don't even know if two quarterbacks, Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, have been on the same roster.
I would think so.
I can't think of two Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks from one school being that close together that they would be on the same roster, except for those two.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
I can't either.
Jason Ray, last word on college football, heads up our Oklahoma channel, Voice of College Football. So join him there after the game, and we're going to be back at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central tomorrow. Greg's going to swing by, hopefully, if he's got a chance, to talk some more Huskers and Sooners.
Before I head off to San Antonio.
Okay. Little high school football scouting.
Let me go check out Richard Torres, the Nebraska quarterback commit, Friday night down in San Antonio.
So give us a little scouting report there and how secure his lean is toward the Huskers. He's committed, right?
He's committed. Yep. Just tied, week one, he tied the Texas high school state record for touchdown passes in a game. So we'll see.
All right. Give us a good scouting report next week.
We will do that.
All right. This show is only possible because of this guy, Greg Peterson, Husker Online. So, Greg, we always appreciate it. Hope everyone else does as well. We'll see everybody at 11:30 in the morning Central Time.
Thanks, guys.